Welcome to Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and today I'm delighted once again to be joined by Jim Simonetti, where we'll be talking to Peter Glancey, who is currently the SYFA West Region Chairman. Welcome to the show, Peter.
Good morning.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion at the moment about youth football. We're waiting intently on updates from the government in relation to what we can and can't do, but there's also a wee bit of confusion, so we thought it would be a good time to bring you in and we'll have a wee chat about where we are just now. And I think straight off the bat that's what we'll do. We'll speak about what the situation is currently and what players and teams can and can't do, Peter. So could you update our listeners in that respect?
Yeah, I appreciate there was an update from the government, but what I will say to teams is please hold off just now until we get an update from the SFA and the SYFA. The information we have is the SFA will issue new guidelines on Monday morning, which hopefully will be clear enough for clubs to ascertain if and when they can go back to training. I think some teams, to be quite honest, think that they can go back on Monday. That might not be the case. They've got to make sure they follow the guidelines laid down. If you actually go onto our regional webpage and Facebook page, you'll see the latest guidelines we have from the SFA. I appreciate that may change on Monday, and as soon as we do get that, we'll put it on the regional webpage, and I know that both the leagues within the region will update their webpage and Facebook pages likewise. So I would say to teams, don't get too overconfident at the present moment in time. Yes, we all want to start back. We all want our kids. I've got my own son, as you all know, and he's keen on playing football. They all want to get back, but don't take any chances yet until it's officially confirmed by the SYFA. And I know the numbers might be up to 15 players, but I'll say to teams, please remember, SYFA guidelines say you must have 2 officials. So that reduces the number of households within that group that you can have. So please don't yet go back to full-time training like some clubs are kind of advertising until everything's confirmed by the SYFA.
There's a question come through on the social media as well in relation to that, talking about facilities, because obviously there might be a suggestion that people can go back to play, but some venues won't be open until late August, early September. Yeah,
I did have, fun enough, a conversation with Glasgow Culture, Sports and Development Officer this morning. I believe Glasgow Green is reopening on the 10th of August, or possibly the 17th, and Torryglen's the 24th. At this point, that's the only venues within Glasgow that may well be opening for football. That doesn't mean that the leagues will start back at that time as well, because we have to get permission from the government and the SFA to restart playing football for kids. What I will say to teams is, especially in the Glasgow District, which I'm the chairperson of, is as soon as we get the go-ahead, we'll start back, but teams need to get back into training first. That's priority. Kids need to get back into training. And any information we'll get, we'll update the teams with. We'll inform the teams through the Facebook, through the web page, that this is when we're going to be starting back. But it's going to be a slow process. I would say to teams, don't think that the council are going to open every facility in the next couple of weeks, because there's a big picture to this, and they have to discuss things with unions and the staff, and we have to look at the different aspects of how do we get kids back into facilities, to stop the virus spreading. We have to look at, do we allow parents in? There's a big picture and the council will have to look at before they open facilities.
When you consider your position for the SYFA, how many kids are we talking about here, Peter?
Well, in the Glasgow District, we have, within our region, we have kind of 4 leagues. We have the Glasgow District, which is a Sunday league. We have Paisley and Johnson, which is a Saturday league. We have Ersda, which is Saturday and Sunday, and we have the under-21 West of Scotland. We're probably looking at roughly 600 clubs within the region, and you're talking thousands and thousands of players all through the region. Glasgow District, for example, for the small-sided, we have 350 teams, so you're talking about every weekend, roughly 3,000 children playing football. On top of that, you'll have Paisley on a Saturday and Ersda on a Saturday and Sunday as well. So there's lots of kids playing football out there, an awful lot, which is good. It's absolutely great, but we have to think of their safety before we actually restart. So I would say in total within the region, you're talking probably every week 10, 12,000 kids playing football.
So it's remarkable. And Jim, I'll bring you in here because obviously you're involved in the development of youth football here at the Jimmy Johnson Academy. For a kid who hasn't been able to meet up with their teammates and train and play for about 4 months, how do you think that's impacted on them?
I think it's had a massive impact on the kids, where you look at their integration with other young kids and their social skills all being involved there. It's important that these kids do all get back out together and mix with kids their own age and have a bit of fun, whether it be football, whether it be tennis, whatever sport it may be. It's very important at that young age and as young teenagers that they still mix and they have a talk, getting them away for the tablets and the iPhones, etc. So I think they've actually missed it. I think a lot of the kids have probably missed because they enjoy going to their football training, they enjoy going to their martial arts training or their tennis training or dancing training or whatever it may be. But something that Peter said there, obviously for our side of things at Jimmy Johnston, we try to do things the correct way, Peter. And one of the things that I wouldn't do and the people involved in this wouldn't do would be put the kids back to training too quick and not have any cover with insurance from the SYFA. By that I mean the insurance that we pay on a yearly basis that covers training, that covers games and whatever. So if anyone did go out to play and do training at this particular time, would they be covered within the SYFA guidelines with insurance, etc., and everything else that goes with that?
Well, the first thing, Jim, is they would have to be a member of the SYFA. As soon as a team affiliated to the SYFA, they're covered by insurance. But if the SYFA say, I'm sorry, you can't train, or there's only a certain amount of players can train, and a team actually breaches that, yes, I would say that the insurance is invalid. So clubs would have to be very, very careful and listen to what the SYFA are saying on the guidelines and what they can and cannot do for training. So it will have an effect on their insurance.
At the moment, Peter, until the SFA and the SYFA come together and talk and say, yes, we are authorising you to go and to train, because hopefully there'll be a lot of people listening to this and we can help guide them. So guys will be going out today training with their teams just now.
Yeah.
They can go and take kids and train under their own auspice, but that is definitely not covered by anything that the SYFA and the SFA do together. That is definitely not covered. That's not covered. The message I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, it's not covered. I listened to what you were saying there, Jim, and yeah, kids are desperate to get out playing football. My own son's desperate to get out and play football. And kids have to be with other kids. And one of the aspects, and you touched on one of your podcasts earlier this week, is the mental health of kids.
Definitely,
it's great. And it's great to see clubs are actually, a lot of clubs out there are actually discussing the mental health of kids, and they put it on Twitter and put it on Facebook, and they're trying to benefit the clubs. And that's where we've got to think about the well-being of every player within an association and a league. But we've got to do it in a safe environment. We've got to do it safely and make sure the kids are protected and follow the guidelines laid down by the SFA and the government and say, well, okay, you're allowed X amount of kids training with one coach. Do that. Nobody's saying don't, but do it. Don't take the chance of using the extra, because you will be caught at some point. Somebody out there will let the SYFA know, and you will be caught. And I'm sure the SYFA will take all the measures they can to make sure the teams are not doing this. And if any team caught doing it, will be dealt with by the SYFA.
Yeah.
Very strictly.
So can I ask Peter as well? So we've got all the different regions within the SYFA. What has the correspondence been like since the lockdown has happened between the SYFA board as such and the regions like yourself, which we're involved in, the West region, and obviously the Central region that we're involved in? Has it been clear and precise from the SYFA what should be happening and what is the plans going forward?
Yep. I think, personally speaking, and I know this might not be right, I don't think the communication's been fantastic. One of the main reasons is clubs are contacting us all the time and saying, what can we do? And we are saying, well, it's actually the governing body that has to communicate the information. We do get an update from after every meeting of the joint response group, which is about once a month, and we get an email from them. They have started a question and answer session at the end of May in relation to the AGM, which has been held in September. But that's not really nothing to do with what's going on in the pandemic at the present moment in time. I think what clubs are looking for, and regions, and more importantly leagues, are looking for definite dates and information of what they can actually do and cannot do. And that's been severely lacking, I think, from the SYFA. I've communicated with the SYFA, and so has many of the regions, asking for more information to say, what can we do? And we've been told we have to wait until the government make any announcements, which I can understand. But my argument would be is, we're actually a company. The SYFA are a limited company. And any company in any pandemic are always forward-thinking and thinking of the future. I mean, if you ran a business, you would have to think, let's plan ahead, let's plan how we can get out of this and how we're going to progress and how we're going to grow. And I think that's maybe where the SYFA have let themselves down a wee bit. We haven't gone to our members, we haven't gone to clubs and the leagues and the regions who have got fantastic people out there who've got great ideas and saying, listen, if the small-sided games start back in August, for talking sake, how do we go ahead? Let's go to the government and say, these are the things that we may be able to do to assist in getting football back quicker. And that's working with the regions, working with the councils, and us, the leagues, communicating with the council and saying, okay, you've got a venue, how can we help you by getting the kids in quicker? And does that mean we have to bring in some new rules for the season starting, just for this season, to make sure we go through the pandemic?
Obviously, we're all football guys sitting around here. And when I look at it as well, Peter, the success of the small-sided game in the West region, coming from Tory Glen to Glasgow Green and the surrounding facilities, including here at Cardigan Park as well, we've facilitated with Glasgow and District Youth Football League. But we look at it and we see all these kids, especially, let's say Tory Glen. Let's talk about Tory Glen. Tory Glen, you've got all those kids that come on a Sunday morning. I mean, the management of that going forward, that surely will take a lot of planning, both from the Glasgow District Youth Football League, the SYFA and Glasgow City Council, and how everything is moved together there and it all becomes safe. I mean, I'm disappointed, I think, to hear that the SYFA has not really had much correspondence with yourself and maybe others, and how this is going to be sorted going forward. Well,
the SYFA don't really get involved in leagues and league businesses. They let the leagues get on that themselves. To be honest, Glasgow District's nearly 10 years old, and we took over the small-sided from the SFA. The SFA originally ran the small-sided leagues in Glasgow, and when we took over, we had 40 teams, and we used to play down in Glasgow Green. And we've now expanded that over the 9-10 years to over 350 teams. And we've now got the whole use of Tory Glen, Glasgow Green, Holyrood, Petershill, Cardigan, Crown Point, Holyrood, Lock-Inch. So we've got 6-7 venues we use every Sunday in Glasgow. Now, we couldn't do that without the support of Glasgow City Council and Culture and Sport, who have been absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, they're good.
One, they've got fantastic facilities in Glasgow, which they spent a lot of money on their facilities. So without their help, we couldn't do it. Now, you're talking about organisation. To be quite honest, it's myself who does the small-sided games. Yeah, and it takes a lot of time. I spend probably 5 hours a day, 5 to 6 hours every day as a volunteer, organising fixtures, communicating with teams, getting things done, having meetings with the council, which I've done over the last several years. It does take a lot of organisation, and that's the problem with football, especially youth football. Without volunteers, whereas a person running a football club or a football team to the people running leagues, if we don't have the volunteers, the kids won't have the opportunity to play football. And that's one thing I think we lack is support to the volunteers.
I would agree with that, because the volunteers within football in Scotland is very, very important, because these people give up so much time.
Yeah.
So they give up so much time that they're probably thinking at the moment, we went through this so many weeks, so many months. So what, they'll be getting frustrated. What is our plan to get back? And I don't hear that there is actually a plan at this particular time.
Well, as regards the leagues, we are ready to go. Whenever we get the go-ahead, the small-sided, I've got all the fixtures done up to November. So they're all done, they're all ready to go. So all we have to do is, once we got the go-ahead, communicate with teams to see how many are actually coming back. Because a lot of teams may fold, players might get disillusioned, they might not come back in. So we need to know very quickly. There's no point the government and the SFA saying, by the way, you can start back playing football in 2 weeks' time. We need more weeks than that, because we need to communicate to our teams and say, how many teams are you going to have? how many players you're going to have, so we can then sort the fixtures. The 11 sides, yes, our league secretary is all the teams joining just now, so we can work out the fixtures, we can get the groups, and they'll be ready to start whenever we get the go-ahead.
It's an interesting point, because I was going to ask about the impact. The impact not only on the players, you've spoken there about the thousands of young kids that are involved in youth football, Peter, but also the organisation of the clubs. This pandemic hit, it's devastating, it's affecting households, it's affecting businesses. To be a volunteer to make a football team work takes a lot of your time, like you say, 5-6 hours a day sometimes, depending on your involvement. It's going to be difficult for you to answer this, but what would be your suggestion as to losses in terms of players stroke teams? I mean, I think it's going to affect the highest echelons of football. There's going to be teams that suffer. But when we take it right down to grassroots, do you think we're going to look at a situation where there's going to be a number of teams folding for all the reasons that we've discussed?
I'm an optimist, and I'm extremely hopeful that teams don't fold. Unfortunately, we had one club this week who did fold because they lost their 9 coaches who, because of the break, disillusioned with football. And the job we have to do is now find clubs for these players who have left that club, to find them new clubs. And it might mean new clubs now might actually grow. We are optimistic that there won't be too many clubs and teams that will actually fold. What you might find is a club, for example, Hampden Boys Club, and I'm just using that because we're quite close, might have 3 teams at an age group. They might go down to 2. Mm-hmm. Right? And the sad thing is we might lose players out of this. But I say the job of the clubs and the leagues and the regions is to try and find teams for these players, and maybe new teams will start up. And we have seen a couple of new teams actually been formed in the last few weeks, and that's quite good. As for the 11 sides, we've actually seen a slight growth in numbers for the Glasgow District, and I think Pamela for the Payson Johnsons seen some growth as well. So we're a wee bit more optimistic, but again, it all depends on when we start back. The longer it goes, my heart thinks there'll be a few teams who might have to fold.
And look at some of the other issues that they're going to be facing. Getting together on a football pitch, training is one thing, but getting all the bodies to the football pitch, minibuses, that kind of thing. So what other challenges do you think are going to be faced before we get back to what we would deem normality?
I think that there's lots of challenges out there, and this is one thing Jim touched on, and the SYFA have to have a look at, and the SFA will have to have a look at. For the Glasgow District, we've got teams from Lochilphead, Campbelltown and Oban. Are they going to be able to participate in football? Are they going to be allowed to travel down in a minibus? And vice versa, will our teams be allowed to go up there? So at the present moment in time, we can't really say, you can join the league, because we don't know what's going to happen. And is that going to affect the Scottish Cup? When teams get drawn against a team up in Aberdeen, and are parents going to let their kids travel on a minibus to get up there because there'll be restrictions? And we have to look, as an organisation, we have to look, and football's going to have to change, I think, in the next year. And it might just be a short-term change, but if you take a lead from Glasgow City Council, it's a 2-hour lead. If you're under 17 team, you'll play, I think, 45 minutes each way. If you're under 13 team, you play 35 minutes each way. So do we look and say all football might be 35 minutes each way, so there's no teams meeting up? So when the next team comes on at 12 o'clock, next 2 teams to turn up, the park's empty, and there's no previous players
crossover.
Crossover.
Yeah.
Do we have to look at changing rooms? I know this could be a big argument. Do we have to say to players, you come change the game, so you're not using changing rooms, so there's no issue with council facilities and staff having to clean changing rooms? But then that raises another few issues. What happens if it's pouring a rain and kids jump into cars and it's absolute soaking? Well, under SYFA rules, teams have to provide proper gear and equipment for kids for all weather. So you can look at that. The big one, do we have to look at parents being inside the park? We may have to look at that and say to parents, at the present moment in time, no parents inside the park.
So there is a benefit of the pandemic then?
There is. Maybe a nice hassle.
Jim, just to bring you in there, we're talking about facilities, and there's facilities that are coming the Jimmy Johnson's way that will actually benefit in relation to having more space for kids to be separated and get changed.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been working with Peter way back 2004. So it's been a good working relationship, and yes, we have been gifted through the Scottish Football Partnership the changing facilities that we're going to put here. That will become available obviously to Peter and the teams that comes here to play in the 9v9s. And the last 9v9s that Peter sent the teams over to here over a period of 10 weeks, or I think it amounted to just under 2,000 kids that all came here. They could come in and get changed and whatever. But now Peter's now got, in partnership with ourselves as well, and working with him, he'll have 2 full-blown change facilities facilities outside, that if these other teams come and they want to use them, they're there for them. It's not just for Jimmy Johnson kids. I mean, that'd be impossible. They would just all play games ourselves. It's for all the kids that come here, especially the Glasgow District Youth Football League, which is something very close to my heart, that kids still play more and more in Glasgow. So, in speaking with Kenny and other guys within Jimmy Johnston Academy, that's there for Glasgow District Youth Football League to use under the guidance of the SFP, Scottish Football Partnership, and ourselves, and of course the SFA, who will also be involved in using them through other means that we're involved with them through our charitable trust.
So the Jimmy Johnson will be supporting the youth football to get back to some form of normality, Jim, with these facilities as well. When we go back a wee bit, Peter, my generation, if you like, 20 odd years ago, 11-a-side football, from under 10s up to under 21s, 90-minute games, full-size goals. At what point did that get a review? At what point did Scottish football change to where we are now?
I think the player pathway roughly is about 6-7 years old. And that's, I think we say Henry McLeish did a review, and that's when the SFA came to the SYFA. So you're probably talking, I think I was chairperson at the time, so maybe 8-9 years ago they brought in the player pathway, and that's when we saw the development of 4-a-sides, 5-a-sides, 7-a-sides, and then obviously the last couple of years 9-a-side, and that's changed the game quite a lot. Interestingly, I remember reading something about Wayne Rooney. I mean, Wayne Rooney, 16, and he went to Everton, then he went to Man United. He said he peaked after 10 years. And I'm looking, and this might be controversial, but I spoke to the SFA about it. I just wonder if maybe we're starting a wee bit too young at football now. When I played and you played primary school football, and then you never played really competitive 11-a-sides with boys' clubs or girls' clubs till you were in secondary. Now we're starting a lot younger. Now, if you take that 10 years that Wayne Rooney said, if we've got a 5-year-old kid at 15, he's played his 10 years, is he got fed up with the football? And that's where we've seen the biggest drop. It's the kind of 16s, 17s, 19s and 21s football. So I think it's important that SFA look at maybe the younger ones, and maybe we're putting too much pressure on kids and parents to develop them at such an early age. Fun Force is supposed to be fun force, it's supposed to be kids, and it's the best thing. If you ever go down to Tory Glen on a Sunday morning, you'll never have a better laugh in all your life when you see the wee kids playing football. I mean, I go down there every time. I remember seeing kids building sandcastles with the black rubber on the park, and I remember seeing a kid falling asleep in the park. And you do laugh because it's fun. That's what kids are supposed to do. They're supposed to have a bit of fun, get out there and enjoy it. Some people take it a bit more serious than others, and I think we have to get back to that. I think it's just to see, let's take the pressure off the kids. Maybe we shouldn't start too young with what I would say non-competitive football, just let the kids go and have fun and let them develop, and then when they're older then get into the competitive football. But I think football will change again. There's different aspects of the SFA I'm sure we'll be looking at with UEFA, and as you say, the 9v9s is the kind of the latest initiative they've come up with, which appears to be very good.
I remember McLeish worked for some time on that paper, and when it came out, obviously it was revolutionary for Scottish football by all accounts. I take it he was looking at other European nations that were supposedly doing it well and trying to replicate it. He
did. He actually interviewed me for it, which is interesting, and he did look at Belgium and Germany as the kind of two countries they thought might be quite good. I did actually go with the SFA. The SFA do have these kind of workshops which they go all over Europe to look at different organisations, different countries and how they progress, and vice versa. Countries will come to Scotland to look at our system and how we do it, and we actually surprisingly quite held in high regard regarding our youth football and how we develop. Some countries do it differently, so he looked at different aspects from different countries and tried to come up with the best initiative. But like everything else, it comes down to finance. It's all right having fantastic plans and saying this is what we'd love to do, but we have to look at who's going to pay for it. I mean, football's, for club-wise, is dear enough as it is, and as a league, we try and keep it as cheap as possible. There's a kind of myth out there that volunteers who run leagues get lots of expenses and do this and get paid. For the Glasgow District, our guys, we don't get anything. I don't get any expenses, I don't get any wages, I don't get anything from the SYFA. It's all on a voluntary basis, and 90% of volunteers will do that. Same with the people who run football teams. We do not take expenses. We try and keep it as cheap as possible for our clubs, because we know we all ran teams. I still run teams. I know how expensive it can be to run a football club. So it's all down to finance. It's all down to how we're going to progress it and how we're going to finance all the plans the SFA have and hopefully the leagues have with the SYFA. But Henry McLeish, he was certainly optimistic that we could improve, and I think the biggest one was facilities first. Mm-hmm. Let's get the facilities in, and slowly but surely the facilities are getting there. But then, if you get the facilities, it's the costing of the facilities for the teams to afford, which was a big thing. And I'm delighted that Glasgow City Council last January, just before lockdown, announced a new price structure for all their venues, which has reduced a lot of the prices for all the teams as well, which will hopefully will help in the long run.
It's a difficult one really, because what you want is you want a structure and you want people to be able to impart the knowledge and the coaching expertise that they've got, but in order to do that, the facility that's used will come at a cost. You're trying to balance it from getting kids to play football who often are underprivileged kids who might not be able to afford it, but then at the same time you're going to have a cost somewhere down the line. So it is a difficult one, Peter, and you know the commitment of the volunteers, the whole Scottish game up to a point is basically built on the commitment of people who aren't actually getting paid, which I find phenomenal.
Yeah.
When you look at the McLeish paper, and as you say, you're thinking yourself, maybe it's too organised, too young. Maybe that's one of the criticisms at the moment. When do you think we would expect to see the improvements? And I think for a typical football fan, they're looking for improvements on an international level.
Yeah.
How long is that going to take?
I know the SFA had a 10-year plan to try and improve our football. And there's good players out there. I think the problem with a personal level is we're too critical sometimes. I mean, you look at some of the young players coming through and some cracking players coming through all the clubs in Scotland, but it's just giving them a chance. And we're not the only ones. England's the same. And you look at a lot of English players, young English players, are now going abroad to enhance their career. And maybe that's what some of our young Scottish players are going to have to look at, is to improve, is to go abroad. And you've got young players now going down south. So there's a lot of talent there. It's just getting hold of that talent, and I think there's too much pressure on clubs within Scotland to survive in the Premier League. So are young players getting the chance to actually play? Are they getting a chance to shine? They might get 20 minutes here, they might get 20 minutes there, and that's not enough for them. They've got to be playing on a regular high level game week in, week out. And I think Scottish football has to look at itself and say, what's the best for our young players coming through, and I was interested to see about them talking about Rangers and Celtic putting cold teams into the lower divisions. Is that a good idea? It might help the young players improve, where they're playing regularly rather than travelling down and playing a friendly down against Man City or Everton, where there's nothing really to the game.
They're not playing many games. That's a big issue as well. I think I was looking at the Celtic development team playing 13 games in a season, 13 games. So when you look at that, and again, maybe an old school approach, was that we had a reserve league.
Yes.
So players more or less were playing every week, be that for the first team or the reserve team. You look at a Celtic squad, for example, it's a bloated squad, and it has been for some time, and they normally have 12 or 14 players out on loan. Mm-hmm. So they're actually learning a different method of playing, a different philosophy perhaps of the coaching staff. Every ex-player we speak to who played reserve team football says that Scottish football's missing it. Yes. Do you think that's a bridge that should maybe be reintroduced?
I think it is a bridge. I totally agree with I'm not a footballer, but I totally agree. Even when I was a boy, you had the reserve league, and it also meant players from the first team who were injured could go and play for the reserve team and get themselves fit for the first team. It gave the young boys a great opportunity to go out there and play football. As you say, Celtic Development played 13 games a season. Is a player going to develop from that? Only Celtic or Rangers or Hearts or Hibs can answer that, but I would say probably no. They're not playing enough football. There's only so much training you can do, and I think the reserve league would be a great opportunity for young players to play every week. And I think, to be quite honest, when I was a boy, I used to go and watch a couple of reserve games.
Definitely.
If a team were away from home, you used to go to away from home. You used to go to home park and watch your reserve team play, and it was great. And you saw players, you think he's going to make it, he's not going to make it, and it's good that way. And I think clubs and the SFA may have to seriously look at it. I know there's a cost implication for a lot of clubs, and a lot of clubs might not be able to afford it. But if you want to develop players in Scotland, then I think it's a way forward. Yeah.
The player that I spoke to in some depth in relation to that was Brian McClare, who obviously had a spell at the SFA which didn't really work out.
Yeah.
His argument as well was time. he said he wouldn't return to football unless he had an agreement that there was going to be time to develop something.
Yeah.
Do you think one of the key benefits of the pandemic, if it can be called a benefit, is that clubs will start looking back at their youth because they can't afford to keep or maintain a first team squad of pros? I know that a lot of clubs have released, Dunfermline for example, released 17 players. Yeah. Do you think that's going to benefit the youth?
I hope so. I certainly do. I think hopefully, but the problem we have is communication. I mean, there's Dunfermline released 17 players. Where are these 17 players going to go to? Are they going to give up football altogether because they think I'm never going to make it as a footballer, or are they going to go back to juniors or amateurs or boys clubs? And that's a big thing we've been seeing to SFA for years and years. Pro clubs will come in and take players from a boys club. They'll sign them for a year. They may make it, they may not make it. The problem is when they release them, a lot of these players turn around and say, well, that's me, I'm never going to be a player. I'll just give up playing football, which is wrong.
Disillusionment.
They're disillusioned, and it's not the players' fault. It's not the players' fault, but we have to get these players back into football. And that's where senior clubs, I think, should be working closely with the SFA and the SYFA and the leagues and saying, listen, I've released this player, have you got a good club they can go to? And we'll keep an eye on them for the next, because they might develop back. And I mean, I've seen it myself, especially with the young boys. I run the under-13s regional squad, right? And I've seen boys come in and the parents said, away pro youth, and then they're back after 6 months and they're disillusioned. Can I get back into regional squad? Because they enjoyed more playing with their friends and playing with their schoolmates on a Saturday or Sunday and playing for the regional squad, whatever it be, rather than the pressure of going to a pro youth club.
So seeing that, Peter, and this is one of my thoughts, Paul, that why don't they let them enjoy the game and understand to enjoy the game first, enjoy it, and then take that step on? I found a lot of kids that when they go into these professional clubs, whatever they may be, they don't necessarily settle as quick as another kid. They'll come back out, they'll start enjoying themselves, they'll play football with, as you said, with their friends, but they're not under as much pressure that I'm an individual, I've got to work harder. They've got within the youth clubs that they can be part of a team and learn to be part of a team. Listen, there's always time to learn to be an individual when you get to a professional club to make it, because you've got to be very selfish and there to become a professional footballer. So a lot of kids do get disillusioned when again come back out. We've had a few stories here, Jimmy Johnson, that kids have came out of pro youth, came and enjoyed it, and then went back and they're still in it. One was the boy that's up at Partick Thistle now, Senny. Yep. He was in it and whatever. Now he's back in again. He's up at Partick Thistle. He's just one of the kids. But I think a lot of kids get disillusioned. But I've got to say that parents become disillusioned very, very quickly as well. That's my son. He signed with Celtic. No, he's training with Celtic or Rangers or Aberdeen or Hibs. You don't play until you take that field of play as a professional footballer, and then you stay there. All these kids are doing at the moment is going and training, which is fantastic. Yeah. It's good. And on the other hand, not to contradict myself that they should still be enjoying themselves, but it's good that they're going there. But don't get disillusioned that they have made it once they get to a pro club. There's a long, long way and a long road to go, Paul.
I think you're right, Jim. It's difficult for kids. I mean, if you're a 12-year-old boy or a 12-year-old girl and you're playing with your friends every Saturday or Sunday, and all of a sudden a pro youth club come in and take you away, you're going to an environment where you don't know anybody. And what we forget is these are young kids, and all kids are different. Some kids will blossom under that and some won't, because they're going into an environment they don't know anybody, and so a lot of them will find it difficult to play football with a bunch of kids they don't actually know, especially if you're new to that team. The rest of them have been playing for 6-7 months together, a year together, and you a new boy or a new girl, and you're going into this club and you don't know anybody, and some of them just go, oh, I can't handle this, I don't like this, Dad, I want to go back to the boys' club. And you're right, Jim, there's a lot of pressure from parents as well. Think, right, my son or daughter's signed for Celtic, Rangers, Aberdeen, Hearts, whatever it's going to be, and say that's you made it. And there's a long, long way to go. Just because you've signed for a club doesn't mean you're ever going to make it. And as we see players getting released all the time. And I think parents have to be educated. Kids have to be helped and say, right, okay, let's get into Celtic, Rangers, Hearts, Aberdeen, whatever it's going to be. Train with them, but still play with your boys' club on a Saturday, Sunday. Yeah. That's a problem. Go and train. But we've also got to be careful they don't overtrain too much. I mean, I know kids who are 9-10 are out training 5 times a week with different clubs, pro youth, Rangers, Motherwell, and then playing for their own club on a Saturday, Sunday. And we've got to be careful we don't burn out children as well. I think that's an issue, and that's because some parents are so desperate for their child to make it.
You're right, Peter, but what parents are doing there as well is dealing in indecisiveness. Yeah. Oh, it'll be good there, will be better here, for them, no for the kid, rather than just go, know what, just go and play football.
Go play football, go enjoy it. And I think that's one of the problems is some aspects the enjoyment has gone out the game. You know, when I played for a primary school, I loved getting up on a Saturday morning and running down to the park and playing football. And that's what we've got to go back to. I think we've got to get kids actually enjoying it.
Definitely.
And taking the pressure off them. That you have to be a superstar by the age of 12 and then burn out when you're 15, 16.
It becomes more mechanical. My biggest concern as well, you're talking there about youth football and you might get an opportunity, let's say for Motherwell, Dundee United, Hibs. If you're from Fife and you're from an underprivileged background, your mum and dad don't have a car, you could be the most talented player in the region, but you're going to suffer. And then it comes back to finance again. So do you think a lot of kids in the past, when you look at the hunger and the passion and the drive to succeed in our country, they came from underprivileged backgrounds? So do you think that the pro youth system isn't really built for that aspect?
It's not built for that aspect because, I'll be honest, I think some, especially the big clubs, if they've got an under 15 team, for example, they're probably looking for only 1 or 2 players to actually make it to the full grade. And there's the rest of the team who I feel sorry for, who may be discarded. And that's the aspect I think we all have to look at, is making sure these kids get back into playing football. You know, and some kids are different. Some kids just love playing with the pals and don't want to be involved. I remember years and years ago, I ran a team and I had a boy, Stephen, didn't kick a ball till he was 14, 15. And I was running under 15s at the time. We moved up to under 18s and he's got better and better and better. Absolute fantastic player. I went up and played Dundee Celtic in the quarterfinals of the Scottish Cup. We drew 4 each down in Glasgow. He missed a sitter in the last minute, which I've never let him forget. But he then played Dundee Celtic. Jim Duffy was the Dundee manager at the time. And he was standing at the park, watched a great game of football. We were all over him, we couldn't score. They scored in the last minute, 1-0. That's life. I went home, I got a phone call on the Tuesday, I think it was, and it was Jim Duffy wanted to sign this boy Stephen there and then and have him on the bench against Celtic at Parkhead on the Saturday.
Wow, great story.
And I said to phoned Stephen's dad and told him. Stephen said, no thanks, I just want to play with my pals. And that was him.
Amazing.
Didn't take the opportunity. He don't know what's going to happen. He could have made a professional player. He don't know, but he just wanted to play with his pals and enjoy his football. And you'll have kids who do that. But in the other aspect, you'll have kids who want to be a footballer, and at age 9, 10, go and join one of the big clubs, and you never see them or hear from them again. And that's a big issue I have with pro youth.
Just disappear.
Yeah.
You mentioned memories of yourself as a kid. What was your football upbringing like?
Not much. I lived over in the south side of Glasgow. In my day, you didn't really have boys' clubs, especially in the south side. We didn't have any. I played from a primary school football team from primary 5 on. I was one of the youngest in. And then I played for a couple of other teams. And then I actually started working when I was about 15, 16. So I kind of gave up playing football a wee bit. Then started playing for an amateur team a few games there. And then when I started working full time, I was 21. I kind of played for the police football team a wee bit now and again. And then my sergeant came to me and said to me, I was working up the north side of Glasgow, there's a wee team looking for a wee bit of help for a set of football strips. There was a wee play park, Milton Park Boys Club. And I got my brother to sponsor him a set of strips. Can still remember it. White with maroon shorts and stripy maroon shorts. And we started that team. There was a guy, David Cartwright, who started it all. And I got in the set of strips. And then he asked me to give him a hand, and from then on I was involved by playing football, youth involved in football. I got involved in the police football, which I'm still involved in. I do the kids football, became chairman of the SYFA, and I just snowballed, and so I ran my own teams. And I've been doing it for nearly 31 years now, and every year I keep saying this is my last year. And then I say no, because if I don't do it, nobody's going to do it. And that's the problem we have. There's no the volunteers who come up and do the things that the high level is in running leagues, that's the problem we have. Because if I walk out tomorrow and get knocked down by a bus, then there's nobody there to run small-sided, for example. So this is something we have to tackle, and this is something we have to help the volunteers, is try and get more people involved. But I love football. I do football because I want to see kids play football, at whatever level they are, whatever opportunity. I've got my own son who's just born in 2008, and he loves playing football, and he's missing it really missing it, and he wants to get out there and back playing, and he's desperate. And I said, we'll just have to hold off. So all I want to see is kids playing football, and it's nothing better than turning up, and Jim will know this, and so will Kerry, turn up on a Sunday morning at Torry Glen and seeing 3,500 kids playing football all over Glasgow, knowing fine well what's going on. It's absolutely fantastic, and I love going I love going and watching games, and I'll try and watch as many games as I possibly can.
It's the future of Scottish football that you're watching there.
It is, and you know, hats off to everybody that takes football, and hats off to maybe some of the unsung guys in the background that do things in the football as well, maybe do the paperwork. Everybody's important, and I will say as well, some of the silent sponsors to football, a businessman for the south side of Glasgow who does a lot for football, and various teams write to him and whatever, and he gives kindly to youth football in a very, very generous way, and he doesn't ask for anything back. So if you've got somebody like him, and then you've got other people as well that give sponsorship to kids, and the guy who gave the donation there as well for the girls football or the women's football, but that's something that we're going to be involved in, is the girls' football, which is we've got going with the SFA and 2 cracking girls there that's working with us. So there's lots of people like yourself, Peter, and everybody else that's involved in football. All unsung heroes, Paul.
Right, Jim. I mean, I take my hat off to every coach, every parent who's involved in a club, everybody who's involved. There's roughly 14,000 volunteers in Scotland under the SYFA. That's a lot of people getting involved in football. And without them, the kids wouldn't be playing football. Mm-hmm. And that's the ones we have to protect and help. When I got involved in the SYFA, I always remember one of the guys telling me that a coach is usually lasts 3 years, between 3 and 5 years, because a coach will usually get involved because their son or daughter plays for the team, and then they get involved. They start going as a parent, and then the club get them in, and they go and do their badges and got involved, and then the son moves on, the daughter moves on, and they go, what am I going to do? And they go to that parent, and that's how clubs develop. And we have to, and clubs are great. Clubs have to, they're doing everything they possibly can. They're getting the coaches through child wellbeing, first aid, all the coaching badges. That's, there's a lot of work there for an actual club to start before the kids can actually play football. And people don't realise that. And vice versa for the leagues. There's a lot of things that the coaches and the parents don't actually realise what leagues have to do. And I'll put my hat, I'm going to stand up for the leagues here, because the leagues do get a lot of abuse, saying that's all your fault, and it's actually nothing to do with it. It's SYFA telling us, that's your rules. And as you know, people don't like rules, and if they breach the rules, then they'll have to get dealt with. And I think one of the problems with football is common sense. I think common sense has kind of disappeared from football, to be quite honest, in the last good few years. And I think volunteers, discipline committees have to look at common sense and say, listen, yes, we all have bad days and we all go ballistic outside the park. Tell me one person that hasn't done that. I've seen Jim and Kenny outside the park. They were there, so people do have bad days.
It's all about the passion, though, isn't it?
It's all about the passion. It's all about passion. And if you start finding clubs massive big fines for a coach going ballistic at the park, who's going to lose out of that? It's the kids playing football, because if you fine a club £200, £300, where's their money coming from?
Aye.
It's coming from the club, and that's so
something else isn't getting purchased. Yep.
Somebody else is not getting purchased because a guy's had a bad day or a girl's had a bad day, but that doesn't justify the abuse to the side of the park. A lot of it's education, and I know we had positive coaching a good few years ago, which has helped, but 9 times out of 10, the coaches are absolutely fantastic at the side of the parks.
You're right, and the rivalry at the side of the park is brilliant. And after, before the game start, after the game's finished, a wee bit in between the rivalry and a bit of banter is good, not in a detrimental way. And then after it, everything's finished, you shake hands and away you go. But that's good. But all the guys are brilliant. All the coaches, every volunteer with every club. Hats off to everybody.
When I go down to Trudaglen on a Sunday morning, right, I never see a game. I'll stand for 2 minutes. I spend most of my time talking to coaches and parents, and that my time flies in, and everybody will say to me, how was that game? I've no idea. I never really saw a minute of it, 2 minutes. But you do spend all your time talking to coaches and talking to parents, and it's great to have. It's a great social gathering. But the coaches are absolutely brilliant. You'll get the 1 or 2, and you say to them, and they go, sorry Peter, that's it, you're fine, I'll remember it. And I have to be honest, there'll be probably a few people out there might disagree with me, but I think Glasgow District, I say our discipline in the last couple of years has improved greatly. We don't really have that many issues in discipline. No. Last season we had 1 discipline meeting for the whole season. We were due another one before lockdown, but only had 2 or 3 cases. So it's actually quite good. Teams are actually getting better at behaving, and we get less issues with coaches and parents and sidelines. We still have issues with players who get sent off and booked and stuff like that. But I think people are now beginning to realise, I can shout and ball aside the park because it's a child wellbeing issue.
Yeah.
And that's been a great help to clubs and to leagues, is the child wellbeing and the issues of PVGs and making sure that everybody's following the letter of the law before they can start taking a football team.
It's the education, and then obviously gradually the cultural change, because it becomes less and less acceptable if fewer people are doing it. One other question came in through the social media, Peter, just while we were talking, and that is, why can't youth players not play for another team, Sunday League for example, so that they can get more game time?
Right, that's up to the SYFA. That's not really a league thing, that's a registration issue. Lots of people think the leagues deal with the registration. It's not SYFA. So the SYFA would have to sit down with other organisations like the amateurs and say, let's have a dual registration system. Okay, so as I said earlier, juniors and 21s, you can play for a junior team and have a dual registration with a under 21 team. And I think they're going to be looking at different dual registration systems. One of the big ones is the new league, which is the under 20 league, which is semi-professional. So a lot of clubs have gone to that. So that'll be the next thing we'll have to look at and say, well, it's a dual registration. They play on a Friday night, I think, or a Saturday. So I'm very much like, the more football teams players can play, the better, because players will get better the more football they play. So I know the SYFA are looking at it, but it's getting agreement with the other association. So amateurs, you can, I think, if my memory serves me right, you can play for an amateur on a Sunday and play for a junior team, under 21 teams on a Saturday. So we just have to look, the SYFA will have to look and discuss with amateurs, juniors, welfare, can we have this dual registration system to enable players to play? It's difficult. You couldn't do it for two SYFA teams. As I said, you can't play for a team 11 sides on a Saturday and 11 teams. But as I said, who will you play for in the Scottish Cup or a regional cup or whatever? What happens if you get injured? Insurance, who covers your insurance? Things like that. So we need to take that with the SYFA. We have given the SYFA due. They are actively looking at the different registration systems, and I think things will change. Hopefully in the next few years.
Here's a question I would like to ask you then. Let's say we've got, hypothetically speaking, so we've got 2008s, 2007s. So, and he signed with Jimmy Johnson, although we know that's two standalone teams.
Yep.
That player can't play. We say, right, Paul's doing fantastic. He's doing great with the 2008s on a Sunday. Let's bring him up with the 2007s on a Saturday. Although it's the same club, he still can't do that. He would need to be released and then signed with the 2007s.
Yes, that's correct. They do. A lot of teams will have a wee loophole where if you're 2008 and you want to play, a 2007 can have 5 players underage. So if you run a 2007 team, you can have 5 players at 2008 playing for you, okay, which is fine. So you've got a squad of 16 players at 2007, 5 of them can be born 2008. For your scenario, for a 08s who play on a Sunday, you think he's been doing quite well or she's been doing quite well, want to play on the Saturday, you would have to release him or her from your Sunday team and then sign him and play him on the Saturday, or play him as a trialist.
Mm-hmm.
Or her as a trialist.
Yep.
But then what some teams do is then re-sign him back in the Monday morning for the 2008.
Yeah.
So there is a wee loophole where I know I shouldn't be telling it, but a lot of clubs have done it and it's not breaching any rules. But if you want to have them permanently playing for the 2007s, they would have to sign the player.
Yeah. It's just that I think that let's go back just a wee second into pro youth again. Mm-hmm. So let's say it was a pro youth player and he was a 2008 and he's playing with the 2008 team. Automatically he can go up and play with the 2007s. So again, within our system within Scotland, we've got all these different rules for different parts of football, when in my thinking, if it was all the one same rule, how easy would that be? It would disclutter everybody's brains that everybody's playing to this one system. Why is it good enough for a professional club and not good enough for the youth grassroots? Surely somebody's got to look at that and say, well, if it's happening there, then what's the problem with it happening here?
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Tim. I'm very much, we've got to develop the game and move it forward. And you're right, parents and coaches will look at the pro youth and say, why have they got a different set of rules from the SYFA clubs? And you're probably right, we probably need the governing body to turn around and say, these are rules for all aspects of football within Scotland. We all follow the same rules. And I agree, I don't see anything wrong with a boy or girl playing for one age group within a club on a Sunday and then going to play for the same club.
The same club.
It's got to be. I would say it's got to be the same club because it's done in Europe. I think in Germany and Holland, they do it because players will develop. You know, if you're playing a season with 2008, a player can get better and better and better and better. Now, the issue comes, say, come January, and that player's really developed, and a pro youth club comes in. Parents are going to turn and say, well, I've got an option of playing a pro youth, or I can move up to a higher level and maybe improve even more.
Yeah.
And I think the opportunity has to go there. But again, that's down to the SYFA and the SFA to come up and have discussions and say, this is the way forward, this is what we have to do. The leagues can't get involved. We don't have any say.
No, I know you don't.
At all.
But the same type of situation also arises with coaches. So again, if I'm at a professional club, I can take the younger team, the older team, or whatever team. Within our organisation, Peter, within the SYFA, as a coach, I can't take the other team within my own club. If I'm a registered coach with the 2007, say, then you can't go and take the 2006s, 2005s, 2004. You've got to release yourself from there and then go back, put back in.
I think that might have changed slightly, Jim.
Right.
I think in the club-wise, you can. Right? We need to check with the SYFA, but I think that's actually changed within your own club. You can maybe coach a couple of teams as long as they're different days. What they don't allow is you coaching Jimmy Johnson on a Saturday and coaching Hampden Boys Club on a Sunday.
Correct.
And that's down to child well-being in case there's issues within one club and the other club doesn't tell the other club. But I think within a club now, and I need to double check this, but I'm sure you're allowed to coach two different age groups. But you can't have as we're speaking about Jimmy Johnson here, but we're speaking for everybody collectively out there. You can't have, right, I'm with Jimmy Johnson today, and then tomorrow I'm with Harmony Row. No,
can't do that.
Can't do that. And that's
you're with one club.
You're one club, and that's it. And that's SYFA rules, and you have to abide with them. And if teams will come to me and say that rule's wrong, we'll change it. I don't have the authority to change the rules. It's up to the clubs. Mm-hmm. You know, as I said earlier on, the SYFA are a company, and if you run any company, you have to go to the shareholders, and the shareholders are our members. So the members are the ones who have to kind of change the rules of the SYFA, and that's done through the AGM. But the registration of coaches and players is done by the SFA, by the SYFA jointly, so you'd have to approach them about possible changes for that. But I think you're right. I think, you know, pro youth have one set of rules for registration, we have a different set of rules, and it'd be nice to have everybody singing from the same hymn sheet and have the same rules.
Paul, obviously your experience with talking to various people over the years within the podcast, and you've heard many different stories. This morning, speaking to Peter and hearing that there's all these different aspects of youth football, and there's all variations of youth football, from professional football, from schools football, which is another subject away down the road as well. What's your initial thoughts to what you're hearing?
I'm going to go back to the conversation we had with Tommy Carruthers.
Yes.
Simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
We're lacking simplicity. It's too convoluted. If you ask me, you know, looking back, Scottish football's golden age, when you look at the European performance of Scottish clubs from the 60s right up to the 80s, when it was all Scottish players, we were regularly getting to the quarter-final, semi-final, final stages of European competitions. And it wasn't just Celtic. Rangers, Dundee, back in the 60s, Dundee United, Aberdeen, regularly at the top table of European football. Since then, with the make-up of Scottish football changing, Jim, and far more overseas players playing in the first teams of the Premier League, we've reached 2 UEFA Cup finals. So it's all about simplicity, because when we were doing it before, it was a far more simple setup. Like you say, you're getting young kids in and trying to turn them into machines at a very, very young age. Now they may fall by the wayside, or they may peak too soon. So I think it's all about getting back to simplicity. And, you know, we can learn a lot from other sports, martial arts, for example, to use Tommy's example. Just simplicity is genius, you know, and that should really be the way. But I would ask you the question, know that I'm shirking the question Jim's asking. I would ask you the question, what does Scotland need to do to get back to that golden age?
You're right. Well, we need to make it simple. We've overcomplicated, I think, football. We went through the dark ages, and we thought, right, how can we change it with Mark Watt? It's some great ideas, but we thought, right, let's go the European way. And we've tried that, and we're looking at it, and only time will tell. What I don't think is working. It's working in part. We are still getting some good players on, but we're making it too complicated, and we're putting too much pressure on young players to make that, let's get into the first team. Let's get in there. You want you to be a superstar and make it big and make lots of money, where back in the our day, we didn't have that. You wanted to play football and you played for a team and there was a success of the team. You just need to get back to basics, I think, and sometimes we're doing, coaching's fantastic, 100% support of coach, but are we making it too difficult for people to get involved in teams? Are we putting too much pressure on with having to all do your coaching badges and child well-being, which are all highly important, but 30 years ago we never thought of this, and things that the society's changed, times changed, and these are important, we have these, but I'd also just think we're putting far too much pressure on young kids to make a football, and I know a lot of people will disagree with me, but I think we are starting too young, and the days you were talking about, we didn't have the old firm, and the clubs didn't have under the 8s and under 9s and the 7s. They started from the 11s and they were brought up, and that's where the success came from. So should we be looking at the small sided games? Yes, they're fantastic, but should pro youth have that? Should the kids be playing the boys clubs or girls clubs and enjoy themselves? And then the pro youth will come in if when players are 12, 13, then the pro youth clubs could come in. But there's also got to be that crossover when clubs say, right, okay, financial gain, if youth clubs want to survive, we need to get money from the government, and we need to get money from the SFA, and we need to get money from the pro clubs. I mean, I think if Rangers came in or Celtic came in and took a player from Jimmy Johnson Academy and said, we want to sign you, I think it's £15 or £25, Jim, you may be able to tell me you're supposed to get, right? Which is nothing. You don't get it. And most clubs don't even know that, and most professional clubs probably don't pay that. But you have a boy or a girl who's been with a club since they were 6 and played it for 5-6 years. That coach in that club has invested a lot of time and effort into that player, just like the professional clubs do the older age groups. And then all of a sudden a professional club comes in and takes him, and the club get nothing. They might get, I think, £25 the most. That's wrong. I think that's wrong. But then the club and the coach is under pressure from the parent to be saying, I want my son and daughter to go and play for pro youth, so release them. And if they don't release them, I'll go to the SYFA and get the player released, and then they can go and join. There's got to be a way that the pro youth clubs communicate more with the youth clubs and work together rather than against each other. Some clubs are better than others, don't get me wrong. Some have improved over the years in how they communicate and work with others. But there is youth clubs here and the pro youth are up there, and there's nothing really in the middle for the communication and for working together.
The players that we've helped to get on the pathway of professional football, the organisation of Jimmy Johnson Charitable Trust has not received a penny from one club who did pay us. It was for junior, but the majority, 99% of the players that's left here and went to professional football, nobody's come back and said, well, here guys, this is for yous or whatever. Nobody's done it with us. But maybe in the same hand, we've never asked anybody for anything, Peter.
Well, the problem, Jim, is would you know that?
No.
Well, that's one of the big issues I have. Clubs don't know.
Aye.
It's like a transfer fee. When Craig Gordon got sold for, I don't know, it's £8 million, his boys club would have got, I think it's 5% or 5% or something. It's a percentage on a transfer fee that the clubs get. And so his club, which was based in Edinburgh, did get a wee bit of money, which is great, which is absolutely fantastic. Which are reinvesting back into that club. But clubs don't know that, and they'll go, oh, there's that player away. He or she used to play for me, and all the years there, and they get absolutely nothing. Where actually, yes, you do.
It would be nice if something like that was to happen for the higher levels of football, that they say, right, you know what, even the professional clubs, right, how much a percentage are we going to help to put back in to where these young players are first introduced to football, and then they build up, these clubs and coaches build up a relationship and cultivate a relationship with these young players and help them get to the next level of football. Where is that coming back down? I don't actually see it coming back to us, the youth football I'm talking about.
It's down to communication, but you also need the pro youth clubs working with the leagues, right, and working with the clubs, right? And saying, there's too much of a gap between them. I mean, you go down to Torrey Grant on a Sunday morning, right, and all you can see, and if you go to Paisley League, whatever league it is, all you see is scouts walking about looking for players at 8, 9, 10. And these players might get picked up and go away, but there's nothing from the pro youth clubs coming down to youth clubs. See, even if they turned around and gave you a bag of footballs, that would be so beneficial to some clubs, because they're struggling financially, and that's what I'm trying to say. There's nothing. you know, you've got the SYFA and you've got the pro clubs up there and nobody in the middle, and clubs don't, it's down to communication, clubs don't actually know what they're entitled to and what, and you know, yes, they might be in the SYFA rules, but I think the SSFA should be saying to clubs, professional clubs, right, you've got that player from Jimmy Johnson Academy, you owe them X amount.
You shouldn't have to ask for it. This is the thing. It should be an automatic process.
And £25 is nothing. Absolutely nothing, especially if there's a player been with you for 5-6 years and you've invested a lot of time and effort, and the player's now got an opportunity. It should be a wee bit more. You know, and I know
he's away.
And I know clubs, and it actually might help in a wee bit, because if you increase, say if we're talking, say, £200 a player, professional clubs are less likely probably to come in because saying that's a lot more money, and grab 3 or 4 boys or girls from one team and take them away, and then discard 2 or 3 of them 4 or 5 months later. They'll be more selective on the players they're picking and say, well, he or she's got a better chance, which will help the boys clubs and will actually help the players, because they'll probably develop more with their boys club, and then the professional clubs can come back in a year later and say, and it's a good retainment, because we'll retain more players at the youth clubs, and it'll probably be beneficial to the pro youth as well.
I think, Paul, that Peter's hit on something that possibly let the kids enjoy themselves when they're younger, and then when they get to a certain age, back like the old S-form thing, then they go back into professional clubs from there. Peter, obviously you've been involved with the Glasgow District Youth Football League and for many years, and then you became one of the executives within the SYFA, and you've done a fantastic job in there, and it's been great working with you over the years, and we look forward to working with you in the future. What I would like to see in my colleagues and the patrons within Jimmy Johnson Charitable Trust and Academy would like to see that we develop a bigger relationship, that games, i.e. semi-finals, cup finals, could come back to here at Cathkin Park, and I think that would be fantastic for some of the young players to play where all the greats have played over the years. Yep. So hopefully, Peter, you would consider that.
Oh, totally. I mean, for leagues to survive, partnership working is the way forward. It has to be. And thankfully, we've got a great relationship with Glasgow City Council and Culture and Sport. We have a great relationship with you, and we've already discussed, and we'd be more than delighted to hold our finals here. Absolutely delighted. Well, as you know, Peter, we're going through our community asset transfer at the moment. Yeah. With the council sign over the parties to look after it and maintain it and whatever. And we know that you support that fully from within the Glasgow District Youth Football League. So I would love you to have your cup finals, and so would the patrons and the committee and everybody here, hopefully one day in the near future. No, I think that'll be a great partnership. The league will certainly, we use your park already for a 9v9, so it's a natural progression to use it for our cup finals, which it's a great environment. It's old Third Lanark's ground, it's old Second Hampden, so it's now a great home for your own club. So we'll be delighted to work with you and fantastic, have a finals here. So yeah, we will discuss that at a later date. Great, thank you. We've been talking about grassroots football in Scotland and how we're going to get back to some form of normality. It's been an absolute pleasure. All that's left for Jim and I to say, Peter, is thank you for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind. No, thank you very much for having me. A pleasure. I hope I haven't upset too many people out there, but yes, and just say to everybody, just bide your time and enjoy your football.